everybody. Good morning to our African and European countries who have joined us, and good afternoon, good evening to our Asian countries. I would like to be the first to welcome you all to our webinar today, Surviving a Crisis. We are going to get started shortly. First of all, I'd like to just go over some housekeeping rules. There's no need to take screenshots today as we are recording the video and share with yourselves at the end. We'll share with you the presentation as well. So first of all, we're just going to go through the quick agenda. It's a little different than our past webinars that we've had recently, as this is a special one. We are going to do a quick introduction, followed by this Axel Schulzer, our co-founder and chairman of the World Innovations Forum, is going to make a quick introduction into WIForum and our meetup groups that we have. Following that, we're going to have a couple of our country ambassadors make an introduction into what they're doing and really introduce themselves to you guys so that you get to know them. Following that, we will have the Surviving a Crisis webinar, and we'll have questions and stories at the end. During this webinar, if you have any questions throughout, please leave the questions in the control panel on the GoToWebinar, and I will address them as I can. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker. If you have been on a past webinar, you already know him very well. But for those of you who are first joining us, it helps to make a quick introduction. So Axel Schulzer, he is the founder and chairman of the World Innovation Forum. He is a highly innovative entrepreneur himself, as he changed the face of the tech distribution in the 80s and built a $5 billion tech distributor with all new business model. In 1997, he built the first company with a digital stock exchange. And in 2000, Axel created one of the software as a service based businesses with a patented and very distributed sales channel management software. From 2015 onwards, Axel started to help startups to develop distributed business models in a far more methodical way than anybody else. So without further ado, I will let him get started with his presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Alyssa, and yeah, welcome also from my side. What I'd like to do is I start real quick with most of you probably coming from meetups. So I start with the meetup section. We decided to set up local meetups, even though in many countries, obviously, local is a difficult word right now because many current countries are under lockdown. And if I say many, it's actually across the world, whether it's west, east, north, or south, it varies. Therefore, for the time being, we will actually do also local meetups digitally. And this is the first, and this one is a little bit of an exception because it is in Asia and Africa at the same time. So in all the local cities, we have attendees and guests and friends who joined, and we will do that in the future just specifically for the various locations. So that might be Accra in Ghana, or it might be Lagos in Nigeria, it might be Kathmandu in Nepal, and so forth and so forth. In these local meetups, even if they are digital, are local, so that we have a way to help develop the local communities. Now, today I want to introduce the World Innovations Forum really quickly because we have a lot of guests that have not known us for a longer time, and so probably they have never heard why we even exist and what's actually going on in here. So as Alyssa said, we lived most of our lives actually in Silicon Valley, and I learned how Silicon Valley actually come to existence, and that's an interesting story. So Silicon Valley was in the 70s and actually in the 50s was sort of the furthest west farmland, very conservative and so forth. And there were three guys in particular, Ted Terman, who worked with Hewlett and with Packard together, and they got the company Hewlett Packard up, and Fred was actually the driver. William Sheckley, kind of known for the creator of Silicon Valley, from Fairchild, started this in a basically down in the south of the valley, and later on Out of Fairchild came Gordon Moore and started Intel. And these three guys basically started a ecosystem of, I mean, gigantic entrepreneurs many, many years ago out of nothing. Stephen Jobs is probably one of the most dominant one because his ingenuity and his creativity and also his way of innovating things were just phenomenal. But before them, there was absolutely nothing but orchards. I mean, trees and orange plantations and so forth. Now, moving fast forward, I wanted to see how was it actually back in Europe. So here are three guys who are responsible for the entire ecosystem of Switzerland. And when they started in the 80s, Switzerland was the poorest country in Europe. And these guys just had crazy ideas and, you know, old black and white pictures, people looked that way back in the days. And so they built a foundation for the ecosystem in Switzerland, where it became one of the wealthiest countries in the world, with just within a little over 100 years. Now, this is Germany. Carl Benz, you know, the Mercedes-Benz guy, Robert Bosch, Friedrich Krupp, the steel guy, and Werner von Siemens, you know, Siemens, were the driver, which is today a multi-trillion-dollar economy, one of the most powerful economic countries in the world. So, and as also here, Germany at that time in the 1880s didn't really exist as a country. It was a fragmented, partially, you know, kingdoms and little areas, which became Germany actually after these guys sort of worked all together. Now, make one step further. This is South Korea, and here three guys, Lee Boeing-chul and Koo In-hwai and Jang Yo-hyung. I mean, these guys, Samsung, LG, and Hyundai, all of a sudden turned one of the poorest countries in Asia into one of the wealthiest countries. And this was over a time stretch of 10, 20 years, maybe 30. And we realized, and back in the days when we found out, we were actually running an accelerator in San Francisco. And we helped Californian startups or people who came there to grow. And one guy came up to me and said, Axel, you know, this is really great what you're doing, but you know, you need to come to Germany. I mean, you know, we don't have all this knowledge that you have. We're not trained like you are, but you need to train us. And since our kids went over, we went over and we started in Germany a little bit of that. We moved to Switzerland. And in Switzerland, we found one person, or they found us, no matter what. He said, Axel, you know what? If you can do your keynote that you just did, and this was in the World Tourism Forum in Nepal, you will change the world. And I thought, oh yeah, come on, changing the world. I know what it takes. And also, it wasn't really on my map. But Kim Lakai was insisting that we come. And since Nepal is an interesting country anyway, so we said, yes, we do. And so we moved to Nepal. I mean, we flew to Nepal and found amazing people. And when we came back, we actually found amazing people by accident also in Zurich, Switzerland, where we are. So there was a team from Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and presented. And this picture, I think, says it more than anything else. Look at how the people looked at the presentation. I mean, everybody was banned. On the lower left-hand side, you see one of the judges of this pitch presentation, and everybody was stunning, you know, jaw-dropping startups. And we knew that we can do far better in emerging countries than helping the ones that are already well developed to be even more developed. And so this was learning from accidental things and accidental situations and events where we said, no, we need to go and help them to do what our grandfathers did in our world, because what we also realized, there is no wealthy economy ever established without innovation and entrepreneurship. And if you go back to Egypt in the 5000 BC, if you look at what happened in Rome, what happened in China, what happened in the Incas in South America, innovative people, I mean, with a lot of ingenuity, they try to build something that was in order of magnitude different and better what it was before. I mean, it's unbelievable if we realize that Egypt had 5,000 years of their leading time. And so we decided that we want to make a difference. And that's a team of extraordinary people, part of the World Innovations Forum, our ambassadors, our mentors, and our internal team. And we're all committed to help. But our commitment to help is not giving money to the poor. We actually did something that is not clearly not done in the NGO world, where everybody talks about integration and you know, putting all together, being equal to everybody. We do something that is odd, but this is very much the law of nature. We try to help those who have the best talents to actually break through. It's these little plans that go even through a concrete street and build something. We know that only a few entrepreneurs from the past, we know, actually made an entire ecosystem of wealth creation and an economy. And that's what we're trying to do. We try to find these extraordinary entrepreneurs who can build a nation. And whether this is Nigeria or Ghana, whether this is Nepal, Vietnam, Laos, I mean, you name it, we wholeheartedly believe that the mechanism of entrepreneurship needs to be unfolded. Because one thing happened also in all these countries, that all these entrepreneurs who tried hard found a few people who believed in them and had a network, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, then a little bit of knowledge on this side and experience on the other side. And that is exactly what we're standing for. And here is a math that may sound totally crazy, but that's what entrepreneurs are. And I think Alyssa warned you, I'm an entrepreneur myself. So we believe that if we can find 50 entrepreneurs by fall this year in every country, from a selection of a couple of 500 or so, and if we can have 50 entrepreneurs year over year, which means 500 in about 10 years, and if each of them have 5,000 employees in the next 7 years, which is really no magic, this is how successful entrepreneurs have grown companies, then we could come up with an ecosystem around them of approximately 50,000, because a company has so much power that it develops a whole ecosystem around them. There are all of a sudden, there are more restaurants, there are car dealers, there are car mechanics, there's all this. And we believe that within 10 years, this means by the end of this decade, we can actually create 5 million plus the factor 10, 50 million jobs in each of the countries. Depending on the size of the country, some we actually need only 5, others maybe 100 instead of 50. But when I say we, then this is we all together. And we all together can find these gold nuggets entrepreneur. And all together, we can help them to craft concepts and have crazy ideas, build their company. A country like Nepal would actually need a couple hundred entrepreneurs, which already exist, and bring them forward. We all need to help. This is not World Innovations Forum, the organization, it's World Innovations Forum, all of us. And with that, we believe that we can actually make an impact in a way that is not even new, because that happened years ago. And all I can say in terms of the introduction, love to have you join our community, World Innovations Network. Go to WIForum.org and you'll find the community button, register and join. It is in the making, so don't expect this is a vibrant community yet. We just started to build it, but that would be a good starting point for all of us. And that's the story of World Innovations Forum. Thank you. I give it back.
Thank you, Asa, for that quick introduction. I am going to now hand it over shortly to our country ambassadors. I'm just going to make a quick switch over. So we have with us today a couple of ambassadors who are going to make a brief introduction. We couldn't do what we did today without our country ambassadors. So the first one that I have with us today is McCarthy Gapti. He is our Ghana country ambassador. He is a director of the Founder Institute in Tamale, Ghana. He's also a serial entrepreneur himself, innovation consulate, and policy advisor specialist. McCarthy is a young entrepreneur who oversees 50 startups since 2013 and has founded Hop In Academy to serve the entrepreneurial and startup scene in Ghana. He serves on the executive council also of the Ghana Hubs Network, which has about 50 hubs network members in 10 regions of Ghana as the communications director. He travels a lot between both Africa and European countries and nations to network, dialogue, learn, and advise on entrepreneurship, business, technological inclusion, and growing innovation. So without further ado, I believe he is around and he will make his introduction into Ghana and what they have to offer. Looks
Hear me?
like perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Aslin, and also Axel, and all the team behind the World Innovation Forum. My name is Makati Makbati, as she introduced, and I'm glad to be on the as a country ambassador to Ghana with the team across the country as well. She has actually mentioned everything. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I started entrepreneurship journey after high school, where I was trying to figure out where my passion lies. And probably, as you all might know, Ghana is a bit different, and it's still in the early stage of entrepreneurship, innovation, and digitalization. Um, so that's how I started. However, in the journey, we started Hopping Academy between 2012, 2013 till now, which work is an ecosystem and ecosystem enabler. I'm trying to support entrepreneurship, innovation, and startup and SMEs across Ghana. However, it's located in Tamale. But we are strategically located in every part of Ghana. In the long run, I actually started a agriculture value chain company called Agri Transporters, which is into payment solutions to women in the unbanked areas in rural communities. We started another as a transport company called M&M Express. And now we have a water company. So I'm an entrepreneur myself. However, there's a bigger goal than myself, which is helping to shape the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Ghana. And that is where my involvement into programs like the board, I'm a board member for the next 2 years in the Ghana Hubs Network and the communications director. Also currently running Founders Institute Tamale chapter for them with a really dedicated team here. And this is really awesome, and I'm happy to do this alongside following my own passion and now looking at the greater goal. All these years in the greater goal aspect, what we've been trying to shape here in Ghana, it's the human capital of the ecosystem, the market, access to market, to the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and the value chain access to market. We also be involved a lot in governance to see how we can shape in the policy makers and push them to make the right decisions, because sometimes the politicians just make decisions for entrepreneurs, but they are not actually entrepreneurs. So we are looking at how entrepreneurs will actually be involved in the decision making. So it's not just political angle. And I've been involved in different governmental dialogues with the ministries and agencies and all that in Ghana, and also represented Ghana on different delegations to Europe and other places. Infrastructure, we've also been pushing with infrastructure for the entrepreneurship ecosystem also in Ghana, and access to finance, media, and culture. So these are the pillars, the 6 pillars that we are all working towards with other team members. Currently happy to be on the World Innovation Forum in Foundation, being part of the team also in Ghana, and this is really awesome to participate in this. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be on board, and I'm happy to contribute with the team to make this work.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. So right now we have another ambassador who we are hoping will be able to log on. We're just having some technical difficulty, but I'll make a quick introduction for him. And if unfortunately he may not be able to join us, then we will move on, and hopefully on the next call he can make a great introduction, especially because this is one of our original ambassadors who will be joining. So the next ambassador, oops, sorry, too fast here. The next ambassador that we have is Kem Lapi. He is a founder and CEO of a global academy of tourism and hospitality. He is in our Nepal country ambassador. Kem is our founder and CEO, like I said, and he's been successfully educated and trained over 4,000 students from Nepal and 19 other nationalities since 2007. Kim has also been an advisor to the National Vocational Qualification System, one of the Swiss-funded institutions of Ministry of Education in Nepal. And he regularly mentors Nepal's emerging leadership program in the vocational education since 2017. Like I said, he is one of our ambassadors from the first moment, working with us since the beginning of WIForum. So I'm just going to see if I can get him to join as our call. So unfortunately, it looks like I can't get him to join, which is a little disappointing because he really wanted to join us today and be able to speak. So we'll just move on to our next ambassadors. We do have several other ambassadors on our list. They are representing a lot of our countries that we are going to be going to in the next couple of years. Here we are. We have our Nigerian ambassadors. We have 2 ambassadors in Rwanda. We have 1 in Vietnam, as well as 1 in South Korea. If you are interested in being an ambassador or a co-ambassador, please reach out to us. The link there, which you will receive later on, has a list of countries that we are looking to expand into, and we would love to have you represent and be a part of what we are trying to accomplish. And with that note, I am going to pass it back to Axel, and he will start our Surviving a Crisis webinar and get everything started. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll turn on my screen. Switching back and forth. I believe you can see it at least in the next few seconds. And the idea of the Surviving the Crisis came from actually many questions we got that people can't get funding, people have to lay off people, and what is your guys' experience? And with that, we started to think about, what can we do? And the obvious is when you learn from the past, you transform it into the future, which sometimes is good, sometimes it's actually bad, because we wouldn't have innovation if we would continue what we did in the past also in the future. But so a crisis is not something where we need to come up with great ideas for the future. It's actually for something for here and now. And so we thought, okay, let's look what we did in the past in these crises, and we learned actually 2 things. Number 1, there's a crisis every other couple, 5 to 10 years. So if you're an entrepreneur, you will need to learn to get your company through probably many crises in the future. That is not a good thing, but that's simply fact of life. I mean, we have rain and we have sunshine, and so we have to go through, and sometimes the sunshine is actually bad because it dries out the earth, and sometimes rain is bad because it's actually flooding everything. So with that said, let me start with Computer 2000. That was my first company. We started in '83. We didn't get funding because our business model was too bold. So that is another mini crisis, but this is internally. So, you know, if you have great ideas, that people are suspicious. And we grew to about 200 million very, very fast, faster than we could believe. And actually, we were on the edge of, I mean, continuously on the edge of financing the growth. And then almost all of a sudden, the oil crisis hit. And this was within days. And we realized, oh, okay, our revenue goes down. The costs stay the same, the cost anticipated growth, and we didn't have the growth for weeks and then for months. And we were actually almost dead. But that's what entrepreneurs are for. They never give up. And so what we did is we did a couple things that became almost a pattern in our behavior. We had to let go of people, and we had to let them go fast. And fast means, okay, crisis, how long will it take? We don't know. We need to let them go. And it's not just that we fire people. I mean, every entrepreneur has an attachment to their employees, to their people. I mean, we do so many things together, and we turn, you know, from 0 to 100 in a very short period of time, and everybody's super engaged. So it's hard to let somebody go. And so what we did is we told people, you know, we cannot, in the interest of the entire organization, we are risking that the company blows up and then everybody needs to go home. And so we picked people where it was either socially acceptable, or it was people that we just couldn't really need for the jobs that we had. And so every one after the other, we had to explain why. But we also always did, you know, because we picked them in the first place. So we were sure that this was the right decision. And so we told them, you know, if they can't get a job, they should keep in touch with us, because if it goes better and we can afford them, then we will hire them. And actually we did a couple times. And at the end of the day, this company became a $5 billion company in 1997, I believe, IPO'd, and today it's a 37 billion company and has been through every single crisis that you can imagine. So cutting cost. And the other thing was we started an academy in this days of the crisis. And the academy was basically teaching others everything we knew. It wasn't really necessary, we thought, but it was actually something very good in the long run. And we were starting teaching how to set up computers, how to do this, how to do that. And we helped companies to basically implement computers in places where, because of the crisis, they needed to be more automated. And so this is what we did with Computer 2000. When I stepped down as the CEO and basically sold my shares and exited, the company was now huge. So we started another company called Infinigate. And we planned an IPO in 2000. So in 95 to 2000, we were one of the shortest, theoretically, going to public of all times, at least in Europe. But 30 days prior to the IPO, and you know, when you do an IPO, you spend an enormous amount of money in pre-IPO publications, in advertising, attracting investors, and these IPO investors are huge, big time investors. So you do roadshows, you do, I mean, all kinds of things. And this actually ate up millions and millions. And 30 days prior to the IPO, there was no way of selling. And I wasn't sure why. And people said, you know, this is weird. Investors just don't buy. And boom, you know, the internet bubble burst. And we actually saw it in the making, that burst. We didn't have an IPO. I mean, that was clear, but we spent so much money that the company would actually go bust if we don't change immediately. our banker said, no, actually, don't worry, we go out in February. I mean, this was in, as you know, in November. We go out in February and it will be all good, blah, 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 blah. Now, being an entrepreneur, I'm not an investor, I'm not a finance guy, I'm just somebody who has more feelings for the organization than for anything else. And it wasn't about, oh yeah, we do our IPO, we will all get rich in the future. So we did the same thing. In this case, it was actually much tougher because we couldn't get, I mean, a lot of people basically out of the company immediately. I mean, there were rules and regulations that you can't fire people just so. Even if we could, it wouldn't be enough. So we, the founders, we sold our houses, we sold some big cars that we had, and all the luxury piece and puzzles and stuff, and we just made it. I mean, it was a very, very tough year. And also in this year, we offered new services, we ran events, and we charged for the events. We helped on the security side because that was something we realized securities were weak, and the whole company, we did basically, we had a security department, I mean, the cybersecurity products and web services and so on. We focused on security, and that was actually the reason why 2 years later we realized, okay, we're through this. It took 2 years every night, not knowing if we can make it. But we did because we were very rigorous and very fast. And rigorous also means we were focusing entirely on profitability because we know we cannot get money anywhere. And so with that said, we made it with letting people go, very unfortunate, driving the cost down as far as we can, as quickly as we can. And speed is more important than anything else in these days. If you wait too long and hope it will be better in the near future, that is a bad idea. Don't hope, because if we don't know, we don't know. And it may take longer, and that will kill the company in the end. So if something like that happens ultra fast here and now, we don't know the future, so we cut back to drive the company to profitability instantaneously. And if we don't have anything to sell yet, then this is the other part of creativity. We need to create some, whether it's services, we need to help one way or the other. Typically we have a handful of good people, and these handful of good people are smart and can do something, can educate, can help, can do something. And today we're close to $1 billion. You see the company in the background. It's doing very well. And when you look at it, you look at it very different eyes. I mean, when I look at it, it's like unbelievable. How could we make it? Because at the times when it happened in 2000, it was like, why do we do it? And people said, I mean, the banker said, Axel, David, the whole crew, you may actually consider to file bankruptcy and shut it down, because I mean you sold already parts of your assets, and I know you're willing to sell more, but this is all gone then for you personally, and if times go better, you can restart the company. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to file bankruptcy. It's not the bad image or so. I just wanted to make sure that I do the utmost possible to make the company stay alive. Utmost possible to stay the company alive. And that's what we did. Now, this was in the IPO crisis, and I mean, you probably don't know, but it was a crisis. I mean, people jumped out of the window. They killed themselves. I mean, the suicide rate at that times were very, very high because they didn't know how to manage it. They thought this is end of life. I mean, people lost everything they had. And you can easily say, well, I don't have anything. So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that whatever you have, even if it's nearly nothing, it's more than you think. And that is another learning, because with this tiny little bit of something, you can continue to do your business. And it doesn't matter whether it's $1 or it's $1 billion. It really doesn't. You may say, come on, you have no idea. Trust me, it doesn't matter. Now, The next company, and here's another crisis. And so we started in 2000, actually 1999. We started in Silicon Valley, a company, Blue Roads, and part of the the bubble burst, we actually decided, because we had already that technology, we really need to split it. We can't run both companies in parallel. There's too much confusion, and so we moved to Silicon Valley full time, started Blue Roads, and we had a very fast start. I mean, within 10 months, from zero to already a product and already a first customer, and we were just about to close our first seed round. It would have been theoretically one of the biggest seed rounds because of our fast start. September 11 hits for the US. That was a mega crisis. There was not a single dollar spent in any kind of startup across the entire country, because nobody knew, are we going to war? Is this what is going on? Nobody knew. Also, nobody knew how long it would take. Excuse me. And so we knew that our fast start was great, but also here, we also knew that we couldn't sustain our growth. And if you have growth, you basically hire salespeople for the next growth curve, because you have to have them already in order to catch the deals. So again, we had to cut costs, let people go, offered alternative services. And so this was the third time where this pattern hit. Cut cost, ultra fast, let people go, very unfortunately, and offer alternative services, products, whatever it is. Because as long as we have a brain and we have some sort of, hands to do something, we can actually use both to offer something that in our cases, in none of the cases, actually had to do with our product strategy or anything. We just did whatever was possible. 5 years later, we were a market leader in that space, and actually exited the company because there was a too good to be true deal. So when I look at this past, it doesn't matter whether it's a virus, or whether it's a economic crisis, or whether it's attack, a war, or whatever it is. We as entrepreneurs have to think of a mechanism that helps us to do this over time. And I have to tell you, in Blue Roads, it was actually, it was as tough as all the other cases. But the only advantages we had is actually that we know cutting costs very fast, trying to get to profitability with whatever we have, letting people go and be, as sorry as they are to be let go. And we again also here we hired people back after everything was going positive again, and trying to offer alternative product services. In today's world, we know that masks is difficult to get in many countries, so trying to get masks. So we know that the base fabric for building the mask is difficult, but there's at least some clothes or something else. So the ingenuity, the creativity of our mind that helped us to build whatever startup we built may and shall help us also to build something that we didn't anticipate to build. But there comes something that is very interesting and good to understand for any entrepreneur, no matter where, no matter what industry, and no matter what. We need to do as entrepreneur always something where the market is in a need. And if we know what the need is, because we're carefully observing the market, we're carefully listening, what are people needing? Then we take our brain and say, hey brain, can we do that? Can we have a solution? And we may not have a solution in the beginning, but then sit down with your team. Again, we have a company, we're built to build maybe an e-commerce application. But what do we do in the crisis? Well, we may help people who cannot shop but still need to get food, order it, and then we need to work with somebody who can deliver it. There are numerous versions and ways to actually come out of this, but I think the three things, cutting costs fast, letting people go, and offer some alternatives, is a pattern that at least I have seen helping me in every crisis. And you know, when I was asked about crisis, I thought initially I said, I was never in a crisis. And I look back, geez, man, you sure was, and where, and so this is what we came up with in helping you to overcome it, because you probably, as a first-time entrepreneur, have not been in a crisis with your company before. You may have seen many crises before, even as a kid. You know, there's all kinds of things going on in this world, but it's good to know how to deal with it. So the little list here I want to go through real quick is because I can promise you, I mean, unfortunately, that you will see another crisis. There will come something else. I mean, this is the nature of nature, so to speak. You know, we get tested, I mean, around the clock. There is something all of a sudden happening we just did not see coming. Nobody could see, I mean, Corona coming. Nobody could see what's happening. I mean, the biggest difference, I mean, we had all kinds of viruses before, but what we didn't have before is a worldwide connected network that could figure out what's going on, exchange information across the planet, realize what worked here, what worked there. And I mean, you know, some countries look at China as the bad guys, but what they did was actually remarkable. I mean, typically communistic countries cover their troubles up. No, they said, you know, here's a problem, and we shut down. Boom. I mean, that was a huge surprise. And they did this rightfully because they understood very quickly, okay, if this spreads further, that's a bad idea. And it did spread further anyway. It was theoretically too late, but we all have to understand, I mean, nobody knew what was going on when the first cases occurred. So this was the virus. I mean, we had, as I said, we had the oil crisis, we had economic crisis, and there might be other crises coming up too. So always stay in business and never give up. I mean, this is probably the first rule. And it has to do with your own and inner workings of an entrepreneur. There are entrepreneurs who give up. Now, imagine if I would have given up at Computer 2000, you know, 5 billion today, a $37 billion company. It wouldn't exist. Somebody else would have probably picked up the business, of course, but it wouldn't be me. The same in Infinigate. I mean, if we would have given up after the bubble burst, you know, the company wouldn't exist. Thousands of employees. I mean, 16,000 business partners we have, and approximately, I don't even know how many million of customers. Wouldn't exist. Blue Road's the same thing. If we would have given up, boom, wouldn't exist. So, and if you now look at why are, and this was another question I get continuously on Quora, why are getting people so rich as entrepreneurs and so many others fail? And this is, at the end of the day, a very sad, but a very powerful answer. They gave up far too early. And as an entrepreneur, you just don't give up. I mean, that is something that you need to feel in your constitution as a human being. If you are somebody who is giving up rather quickly, and I don't want to say quitter is a negative attitude, it's probably not. It is just a mechanism that tells you, okay, you better give up. But if you're somebody who is giving up quickly, then you're probably not a good entrepreneur, because the next crisis, with unfortunately 100% certainty, will arise. Then adjust your cost structure, if needed, down to zero. And you may say, you know, I have an office, I have people, I mean, I can't, then I have no company. No, you do. You do have a company as long as you stay with the company and find a few people who say, you know what, I wouldn't get a job anyway, and I love what I'm doing here, and I love, you know, working with you, so I stick to it. Of course, I can't make money, but I will find other ways of making money. And that is something where a company can survive on. No office, no salary, no nothing, just thinking and finding ways. And you will be surprised. You find ways. I mean, this is how we humans are built. So if need to be, cost down to zero, meaning You let everything go, and don't think then the company is dead. The company is, and the word company is actually pretty powerful. It's a group of people who are doing something. And as long as you do and you think, you have a company, maybe with others. So then hang on to your team. You may ask them to continue even with no pay. And there are people saying, oh, I have no chance to do that. Okay, accept it. Some people may say, well, I can work, 2 to 3 hours. Super. Some people may say, you know what, I stay with you as an sort of semi-employee, even though I get I want to be in touch, but I can't do a lot because I have a family to feed, and I cannot do something else. I mean, I need to do something else. Fine too. Keep them in your loop. Keep them in touch. Keep thinking with them what you can do. Then create services and even products. I mean, every crisis has a situation that needs to solve problems. And one of these things is obviously in every crisis, people will want to survive. And one of the survival mechanisms is food and drinks and air and a little bit of company, social support. I mean, you can come up with a lot of things to help if you want to keep your company up. And then obviously brainstorm with your team, your mentors, anybody, particularly with the customers. I mean, this is something where sort of, for many people, it's very hard. And it was also for me, when I hit the first time a crisis, it was very hard to tell customers that we're, so to speak, excuse my language, we're in deep shit. And you have to. And when you've been through the first, you will also notice there's a bunch of customers who truly like what you did. They really value your engagement, and they will help you. And so I remember in one of the cases, one of our customers, actually, he was a reseller. I mean, almost depending on our supplies, he said, I mean, we did phenomenal in the last couple of years. I mean, if you need sort of prepayment, yeah, we can talk about this. Obviously, I want to have some percentage, but that's okay. I thought, okay. I mean, if he can do this, that's a lifesaver. And pride is a wrong thing in these days. Turn it off completely. Tell people what it is. Tell people that it's screwed up or whatever. People will understand anyway. And by the way, this is also without crisis. If you screw up, do the same thing, and you will be also rewarded for being honest more than for being proud. I mean, pride is a killer in many, many, many ways. And so when you look through the list and think about your own business and realize, okay, I could do that, but I really don't want to, then that's a good thing, because that means there is something that you could do, whether you like it or not. I mean, nobody likes a crisis. Nobody likes to do things that are not, good right now, but we simply have to. There's no other way. I mean, you can let it go and try to find a job. How many jobs will be out there, and how many people would actually like to hire somebody who gave up and, yeah, give me a job, I need money? Not a good attitude. So what I'm saying is there is always a way. And I experienced myself, and now you can say, yeah, you made a lot of money. Well, later on, yes, but in these days, no. I mean, as I said, in the one case, I mean, we made already a lot of money with a previous company, but we had to sell everything in order to keep the company alive. Now you can say, are you stupid? I mean, you sold everything. I mean, all the luxury, everything you had. Yes, absolutely, we did. And this is again, the spirit of entrepreneurship, because if the impact you're trying to do with your company and with your team is greater than the luxury that you want to maintain, then you're an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you're actually working for yourself. And nothing wrong with that. That's your decision. But you wouldn't probably be able to sustain this till the end of your lifetime, so to speak. Okay, so with that said, there is always life after a crisis. And that means if you get through the tough times, you will be rewarded, because more than half of the people will give up. So you will be the lesser part that will drive through. And if you have been through this, take it as a business vaccine. You are basically immune when the next crisis hits, and you are. And if you don't, then consider never start a company again. And if that is making you feel actually better, having a safe job somewhere, even we all know that there is no safe job in the world, but if that is more comfortable for you, well, you learn something very positive. You know what makes you happy. And this is what life is about. Life is not about suffering and working hard until you die. Life is about what makes you happy. And so the best entrepreneurs are the ones who live through a crisis, because as I said, that's a vaccine that is hardening you, and this is testing your creativity. And if the creativity works, then okay, the next company, if a crisis hits, I know what to do. And if there's one again, which will unfortunately happen, then you are even further immune against the crisis. And when the third one happens, it's coming. I mean, it's like, yeah, sure, give it to me, and you will still be very cautious and driving hard to get through. Now, one of the things I said in the very beginning, we're starting this community, and we are basically here to help. And why do we do that? Because we feel that we were so lucky in our lives that it's sort of our obligation to help others. And if you're in the early days, these guys who are trying to help are always suspicious. And when I met people who said, yeah, I can invest in you, I could do this and that, I thought, why are they doing this? I mean, what's in for them? And over time, you learn, the people who are, the reward is what's in for them. So if you have trouble with your company, reach out to us, ask questions. Hey, Axel, or hey, Marita, or hey, whoever. Talk to your ambassadors to make the connection. Maybe also to other people. I mean, it's, we're not the only one in the world. So, but talk to somebody and ask for help. If you don't ask, you wouldn't get basically you wouldn't get a feedback. But there are people who are happy to give you feedback, and asking is for many people something difficult. Not for everybody. It very much depends on the culture, but helps. And ways to get assistance is simply email. You get an answer to somebody, and they will help you, and that's good for you. Now, if you do the same thing through a WhatsApp group, then you get maybe an answer from 2 or 3 people, but you also help others who didn't have the same question, or wanted to ask it but didn't know how to formulate the question, or didn't even want to ask before because of they're shy or whatever. You help them. And if you go into a community, then you have most likely several answers. And there's something that I can only urge you to do, is use a community, not just ours. When you come into an entrepreneurs community, use it, because there is not always the single right answer. There's actually mostly multiple answers that all are somewhat right, and there may be answers that are wrong, but even the wrong answers is a good answer, because it sharpens your mind to say, well, is this actually right? And you should question any answer, even mine, because my own experience comes from so much a time frame, so much a geography, so much a experience set, and so forth. Not every answer is the right answer, but it may help ignite the picture for you to make it right at the end of the day. And therefore, also, if you as a young entrepreneur, first-time entrepreneur, you think, well, I cannot answer this. I mean, I'm just struggling with my own company. Then I ask you to answer as well. For one single reason, we have on average 0.007% of entrepreneurs on Earth. This is a tiny number. And you're an entrepreneur because something drove you to become an entrepreneur. And that means your mindset is already entrepreneurial. And because there is so little number of entrepreneurs available, your answer, even though you're maybe 20 years old and just started your company 2 or 3 or 5 months ago, it doesn't matter. Your mindset is what drives entrepreneurship, and your answer counts. It's the same thing like, oh, I'm so little, I don't count. And we learn, well, every voice counts. I mean, we know this when it comes to voting. You know that if it comes, we come together and do something. And so this is the same here. So if you want to get good and many answers, use communities, and then you get answers from very different people with very different aspects, and then you can mold it and change it. Very different opinion may also lead to further discussions. And I may say, well, I don't believe that is right because of da 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 da. Somebody else will say, actually, I'm don't be so sure because here is my opinion. And a third one comes in, and so you may theoretically be confused, but that's the best thing you can experience is different perspectives. So that's what life is all about. If I look from here, my perspective to what I see is different than if I look from here. Same eyes, same head, same background, but it looks different. With all that said, ask for help, go for it, and try to make the best out of the situation. But I just ask you to not give up until, and that is a very critical, until it is legally required. Because if you're out of money and you owe people things, that can, depends on the country, get you in legal jeopardy. And that is a timeline that you cannot step over. But what you can do is file Chapter 11 or bankruptcy or whatever it is, but still continue, because your brain continues, and then your team may continue. And if things are over, you may actually continue with your business. But that is the sort of the latest stage of business continuation. But try to not give up. I can only tell you. So lastly, I want to give you the sort of a little bit of more perspective in a positive way, and I'm sure you're moving on. We have our big event, our annual event or our global event in June, June 23 to 25, and we're still having open slots for amazing startups to present. And if I say amazing, I actually mean amazing. What we're trying to do, and this goes back to the slide that you saw, we're trying to find a small number of extraordinary entrepreneurs with big and bold plans, maybe totally crazy, maybe ridiculous, we don't care. Maybe you have no education, we don't care. All we are looking for are the same type of totally crazy and ridiculous people like those who actually built, the current developed countries. I mean, just a quick review back. Carl Benz built the automobile. Yeah, he was the inventor of the automobile. But back then, also Germany was a poor country. And people said, stop it. This is the last thing we need. We need this, we need that. There's people starving to death for hunger and water and whatever. What are you doing here? This is ridiculous. Years later, we understood this was the foundation of an economy that is, one of the best economies in the world today. So we are not shying away from ridiculous, just so you know. So we're looking for entrepreneurs who want to build big things and have the brain to actually think of, partially at least, ways to do that. Because nobody knows what is in 5 years or in 10 years or in 100 years. We sort of expect certain things, but we don't know for sure. And out of this, we're also trying to help with campaigns that will drive revenue. So this is something we're starting soon for those entrepreneurs who have already a product and need to get out of the country with it and sell it basically on a global scale. But for our event, we want you to consider presenting. There is a fundraising and pitch training on June 10, and you can register on our website. There is then an internal competition. This is just for those who are actually joining on June 16, and the 12 best will be presenting on one of the 3 days, June 23 to 25. We're expecting between 1,000 and 2,000 attendees. We have invited, or we will invite, about 600 entrepreneurs. We believe we will have probably around 100 to 200 joining. So there's also a good chance to raise money, and therefore the fundraising and pitch training, we make this actually mandatory, because we want people who present at the World Innovations Forum and present like, people saying, wow, I had no idea that these guys can do that. And so therefore we insist in the training. I think it's 2 or 3 hours. It helps you not only for presenting, it helps you for presenting in any case whenever you go fundraising. And I can tell you, I mean, I rose, I think 10 plus angel rounds, 10 plus VC rounds, even other rounds, half an IPO, a full IPO. I've been through many of the pitch trainings myself, and I helped many startups, raise money. The accelerators, 50% of our accelerator candidates actually rose money in the following 6 months after the accelerator. It's the highest rate. So I think we can help you with that too. And yeah, if you're interested, then you simply register on wiforum.org, and you'll find the join the registration page, and you find also the one on the forum website. So in order to have a couple questions, I'll give it back to Alyssa, and we'll see how we can answer your question best.
Perfect. Thank you, Axel. That was a very informative webinar that you had for us. And we have already gotten a few really good questions come in, but I'm actually going to hold off on the questions for a second and let some other people think of some if they have any. We were able to actually get Ken, our Nepalian country ambassador, on board. So he is now able to speak. We won't be able to do video, but he will be able to speak a little bit about Nepal. So quick introduction again, Kim is our Nepal ambassador. He has been with us since the beginning of WIForum. He is the founder and CEO of the Global Academy of Tourism and Hospitality Education. And I'm going to hand it over to him to just talk a little bit about what's going on there. So Kim, if you are there, please take it away. Maybe not. Kim, can we hear you? Well, we will give it a little bit of time and see. If not, please, if you guys have any questions in the meantime, put it in the question box and I will make sure that Axel gets around to answering them. As we are waiting to see if he can get talking, actually, why don't I ask you a first question then that has come through? You may have already kind of addressed this, but actually this comes from Nepal, one of our attendees from Nepal, and they say, how can I manage all of my projects during this time? So they may have quite a few projects that they have going on. How can they manage it with the crisis going on?
Interesting question. Yeah. So when you say all of the projects, that means you have several and many projects. And I think the natural tendency in general is focus. So in your case, not necessarily the most attractive projects or the biggest projects, but the most profitable projects, because you will need to have the project to sustain the time of the crisis, and you don't know how long it takes, and it might be short, it may be long. And we have seen in Singapore, for instance, was one of the countries that were hit early, did a phenomenal job, was released, everything was cool, and just actually, I think it was a week ago, they had to lock down again because it started again. And these methods, that's called hammer and dance, meaning you put a hammer on it and then you release, and it dances a little bit, but if you not manage that curve carefully of the virus, then it spreads again. So you don't know, and therefore cash is king is a good old term in entrepreneurship, and you will need to have the cash to sustain problems. And therefore order the various projects based on profitability, not on attractiveness, not on size, not on anything, but profitability, and then start from the top. That would be my sort of short answer, without seeing or knowing any details, of course.
Perfect. That little bit of time did help people come up with questions. Now I have a ton coming in. So good that you left a bunch of time open. This question is actually related to our WIForum digital conference. So I will address this one. It says, what type of businesses are you looking to accept? Can it be a concept stage, or does it need to be already operational?
Okay, so concept stage would be a little bit early, but concept stage is can be many things. So if you have a product or the idea of a product where people said, wow, this is very cool, I will test it, and you have some early tests, even if a very rudimentary prototype, that would be okay too. But what we don't want to share at this stage is a rough concept or idea that doesn't really exist, and we don't want to share this for two reasons. One is the further you are in this line of being very early, the further you are towards being ready for market, the more likely you can actually capture attention, and it's good for you as a company. If you're far back, meaning it's very early on and it's not really tested yet and not really understood whether it will work, obviously you believe it will work, then you run the risk that you go with something into a large, in this case, almost global market, and people say, hey, this is a very cool idea, let's look at that. And if they're faster than you, then at the end of the day, execution is everything, and you may wake up a competitor before you really want it. So therefore, I would, in your own interest, suggest concept stage, no. If you have a prototype in the market already, where some people, and even if it's just one or two, are testing it, then absolutely yes.
Great, I think that's a good answer. Really answers that question. One came from Kenya. This question came from Kenya. What advice do you have for pivoting during COVID-19?
What's the advice to?
Pivoting the company structure.
Okay. Yeah, interesting question, good question, because pivoting is something that you do when you're realizing that your company was going into the wrong direction. So the pivot point is then you change the direction to something else. And this is independent of a crisis, by the way. Now, the crisis is not a good reason to pivot, but if it happens to be in a crisis, well, yeah, then you have to pivot, no matter whether with or without crisis. Now, pivoting on the other side is an interesting situation, because pivoting happens when you did not have a very clear vision of the future of your company. Now, pivoting is something that is even trained and taught, and hey, yeah, try to experiment, and then you do this, and if it doesn't work, you pivot, and so forth. There are very different opinion about this. One is, yeah, I mean, if you don't know what to do and you're trying and you want to become an entrepreneur and you can afford it, then try and pivot. That's a good thing. But at one point, you will want and need to have a very clear idea of what you want to achieve. And now if we take, oops, sorry, I just need actually this slide. It's a good one. If you take this Twitter, paper airplane, and this seemed to go in this direction, you see my mouse, I believe. And if this is your goal up here, you go zigzag, but that's not pivoting. You go zigzag in order to go to that goal. But if you say, this is maybe I need to go here, then you pivot here, but then this becomes your goal. And if that doesn't work out and you pivot down here because this seems better, then this is your goal. And guess what? Your customers don't trust you anymore. They don't know what to expect from you. You're here, then you're there, then you do something else. So they say, okay, let's wait until these guys figure it out. So pivoting is an emergency exit if something doesn't work. That's still a good thing, but only in the emergency. And therefore you should learn out of this situation, what is it, what you really want to be in 10 or 20 years? And there is, I think, more than 80% of mentors today, because they also don't know, they tell you, come on, try it out, figure it out. But if you just try and figure it out, you will continuously do that because you didn't have a vision to go somewhere. But if the moment is coming where this vision is solidified, then there is hopefully no pivoting. You will shift and change and go zigzag, but you will want to arrange everything possible for that goal. If you look at the World Innovations Forum, we have one objective. Entrepreneurship and innovation will help to reach prosperity for all nations. That is our goal. And we had to go zigzag. We already found out, well, this is not working or that is not working, but we don't pivot. This is the zigzag that we're going, because there is no straight line on earth. And you have to figure out for yourself, do you have a vision that you try to achieve no matter what? Then that's a good thing. And everything in between is the path. I mean, it's not straight. But pivoting means, okay, we tried something, it doesn't work, we need to do something entirely different, therefore we pivot, the points, the geometric point of the direction changes, and don't do this too often. That's my advice. And this is independent of a crisis. Yeah.
No, that's good. It's very similar to another question that came in about business models. So I think it addressed both ways. We have a question here. How do you go about getting the right community to build one startup?
That's a good question. Interesting question. I have to think about it. No, I mean, there are two things. One is entrepreneurship, which is a sort of, let's call it a general phenomenon. I mean, we have all our kind of understanding what entrepreneurship is and what it means. We don't exactly know why entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs and where it starts. Now, if that's true, that entrepreneurship is a general behavior, so to speak, then it doesn't really matter if this is an entrepreneurship group or association or organization or just community of all kinds of people with all kinds of industry or industry specific. My instinct would tell me, but this is why I needed to also think about the question, because I didn't had this question before. My instinct would say I want to go into community with a diverse ecosystem of entrepreneurs. There might be people who are entrepreneurs and run a tech company, others building construction companies, yet others maybe restaurant, want to start a restaurant and so on. Because diversity is something for our brain that is very important. The more experiences and different experiences we have, the smarter we get. The creativity that we have is fueled by different experiences. Now, if you imagine you would sit in a prison, that your entire experience ever had is what happens in a prison, and you never knew what everything else in life is, that would reduce your creativity. So, you know, if you find a good community, and if you find two, then join two. Probably it's a matter of time how much you can and will allocate, but look for diverse communities, I would say. But this is one of these things where I said, you know, I don't really know as well.
Great. Another question. We'll just keep rolling here. You said you never quit as an entrepreneur, but there are times when it's best to liquidate. How do you decide that?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it's a difficult question because in every situation where you need to liquidate there's a million influences. It's, you know, the local situation, the global situation, the economy, a crisis. I mean, a million things that contribute to the fact that, okay, now it's time to liquidate. I had this question oftentimes from startups who are seeing that it's not going in the right direction and they could not see it's ever working. Then I would say, you know, again, the law is typically the factor number one that tells you when to liquidate, when to file bankruptcy or simply shut it down. But if you are hanging on to it, and this is the other suggestion I make, you know, you may be at the dead end. And the moment you know there's absolutely no chance to make it available, give yourself another 6 months. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you will be surprised how our mind ticks and clicks and finds new ways. But this is only in the case that your inner entrepreneur, so to speak, will not want to give up. And giving up is probably not a skill. It's not a ethical behavior. It's not like, you know, it's a maybe it is a gene or maybe not, but it's something that drives entrepreneurs to go far beyond most other people would go. It's probably very similar to sports athletes. You know, they want to go. I mean, take these plastic wing flyers, you know, from a high rise, and they want to go to some place where they know, yeah, it's a risk, and they even know that they risk their lives for just such an experience, but they will still do it. They cannot do other than try to find their outer limits. And in the entrepreneur's mind, the outer limits is going beyond the crash. Is the crash really the crash, or is there something beyond? And it's the same question like people ask, you know, back, I think, what is it, 600 years ago, we thought Earth is flat. People wanted to go to the outer point. They wanted to know what is at this end. People go to Mars or to the, not yet, but to Moon. I mean, this is a super deadly risk. I mean, chances they can come back is 50-50, and they know, but they still go. They wanted to find it out. For them, it's more important to find that out than their own life. And this is the behavior of a certain group of people. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you feel that this is in you, then you know, okay, I should give it another try. But if you think, gosh, there's no chance, I mean, and you kind of resonate, then saying, okay, you know, I probably better give up, then you also feel, okay, there's no interest anymore. And just to keep it alive, that's probably not a good idea. And so this is why I'm saying it's a very good, but extremely difficult question to answer, because half of the answer is your inner sort of entrepreneurial instinct, and the other half is actually the surroundings. And on the other half, I would say, again, ask your customers. I mean, the customers are the key in your life, in your business life. No customers, no business. And if you talk to them, you know, you will find out whether they want you to go and continue or not. And if you were working on the startup for years and still have no customers, then you know you made an entrepreneurial mistake. And that entrepreneurial mistake is most likely that you don't have a co-founder. Without a co-founder, you typically can go a long way, because you're either a business person or a specialist. And business person are generalists, the horizontal thinkers, and the specialists are the engineers, are vertical thinkers. They go deep. They know, more and more about their special skills, and you know more about the business itself. And those two together are a winning team. Isolated, none of the two could ever survive a business these days. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think you captured a lot there. Another question we have that's come in. This is a bit of a chicken and the egg story, I would say. What comes first? How can one raise first round of money if they haven't reached the market due to the lack of money?
Okay, I would say you cannot. No, you probably can, and that would be bad. You should not raise money before you reach the market. You should not. You should learn how to build a company with nothing and spend nothing and still get to market with it. And this sounds very counterintuitive. How can you get to market with just an idea? And the answer is yes. Because when you go to market and have an idea, whatever it is, because it's in front of me, let's say you have a better paper airplane, and you have a super paper plane that doesn't crash or whatever, doesn't matter. The first thing you will want to do is find out if the market, whoever is your potential customer, likes this idea. And there's the first hurdle. When you don't ask the customer to like it, then you don't get the feedback that this market even exists. Now, if you fear that they are taking away your idea, that's the first sort of learning as an entrepreneur. An idea cannot be stolen. Impossible, cannot. I mean, yes, somebody else could try, but you will always win if you are a good entrepreneur and execute. And if you don't good entrepreneur and don't execute, the idea will be stolen sooner or later anyway. So go to the market and figure out whether this idea is actually a good idea, and find out if would they pay money for the product that you have or the service that you have. And if this is a yes, and if you did this 42 times at least, and don't ask 42, there's an answer for, but not now. So you get 40 plus feedbacks, and people tell you, number one, why they find this a good idea. Then the other key question is, what problem would it solve for you, dear customer? And if they tell you what it solved for them, then you can ask, would you pay for it? And the answer is most likely yes. So if you get 40 of those, this is already, in some cases, rarely, but in some cases enough to get funding. But if you then build sort of a prototype with most rudimentary things, I mean, and you need to understand that the nuclear bomb was built on a kitchen table, and the car was built in a barn, and so it is possible. It's part of, and again, ingenuity of an entrepreneur. Then you can build a prototype and give this one prototype, because it ate up all your money. You had to buy probably material and so on, and have somebody play with it. And if that feedback is still good, then you can go to find an investor. But that is when you are already in the market. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Looking at the time, we may have a little bit longer for one more question. So this is about concept copy. How to avoid this, and does fundraising have to be big enough to cover big marketing costs and kill possible competitors, or what would be good tactics?
So I didn't hear the first. What was it? Content
copy. So whether or not a competitor will come in and copy your content before you've really gotten into the market. Is it best to get fundraising for the marketing to push it out before then, or what is the best tactic to take?
Yeah. Okay. That's a tricky question, because content there are ways to copyright something, but in the end of the day, it goes all the way down to knowledge. And there is a huge debate across the world whether knowledge should be free, or whether people should be able to pay for knowledge. Probably the best example is publishers. Publishers publish original content in their news, whether it's digital or whether it's on paper, it doesn't matter. And if you look at their business model, they basically charged for getting the content out to their public fast. So it's not the content itself. We're talking about content, right? Yeah. Okay.
We're talking about content.
Yeah. So getting the content out.
And concept as well. Concept.
Okay. Yeah. So you get it out fast, and that's one of the things that's called speed to market. And so it doesn't even matter whether it's a product, content, recipe, whatever it is, speed to market is critical. And at the end, when you get to market, speed is more important than perfection. It's an old saying that I crafted, I think, about 25 years ago, and my board was actually once telling me, "Ashton, don't say this. You confuse all your employees." I said, "No, I don't. They need to know that speed is more important than perfection, because speed itself is a quality. It's not rushing and being sloppy and screwing up right and left. No, speed is a quality. It's probably the most leading qualities when you go to market." And so, getting funding for such a thing, and you talked about advertising and marketing and so on. I think no matter what it is, I have yet to see a startup that needed marketing expenditures, money to market, in order to be successful. I don't know a single one, not in the last 30 years at least. Marketing is a way where you use mechanisms like social media today, and if you use it wisely and you build a network, then you go to this network. And social media is not an advertising vehicle. Social media is a relationship vehicle. It's social media. And the social part is all the humans in your network. And if you speak to them, and if they have a relevancy to your business, they're most likely relevant to your future customers. And so there are methods to do that. And one is the so-called NCP model, is network, contribution, participation. So if you have a network and you contribute to the network, knowledge, not your product necessarily, but knowledge, and people say, "Hey, this is interesting. So how do you do that?" And then you push out your product. And if they share it again with their friends, then you reach basically people that you could not reach otherwise at zero cost. And if you do this gradually and nicely and thoughtfully, you basically reach the world. The World Innovations Forum has never spent a penny on advertising. The only advertising we spent was when we look for our team, but we have never spent, anything. And if you look at us, we started in February last year. We got pretty far on the way we do things at zero cost. And so when you reach out and try to get funding, you get funding for growth. And growth means investment typically in human beings who are now starting to talk and get their network to move out. And so that growth financing, that is something that investors like to do, but they would not give you money for advertising for something that you cannot communicate yourself. Yeah, I think that's sort of the sum of it.
Yeah, that pretty much answers everything. So I'm looking at the time now, and we have come to the end of our session. And thank you for a great webinar that we had, Surviving a Crisis, and the introductions that we had from the country ambassadors. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get everybody, but like Axel said, if you join our WIForum conference, digital conference in June, you will get to meet all of them again. They all have a time slot to be talking and kind of introduce what's going on. So thank you everybody for joining today. Again, The webinar has been recorded and the presentation will be shared with you in the next few days. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to us on any of our platforms, and hopefully you guys will join our community and continue the conversation. Thank you, Axel, for a great presentation, and wishing everybody a great day.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks, team. Bye-bye.